Okay, let's dive right into this. Today, we're exploring something literally mind-blowing, the incredible, complex structure of life on our planet. I mean, have you ever stopped to think about how a tiny, invisible speck of life connects to a massive ocean? Well, nature has this amazing way of organizing itself, and in this explainer, we're going to unpack exactly how the whole thing works.
Just look at the sheer scale and variety of animals, plants, and nature we have out there. We're talking everything from giant trees and soaring eagles down to wolves, dolphins, and little butterflies. Scientists call this incredible variety biodiversity. Earth is absolutely packed with life, and it's incredibly diverse. But here's the thing, it's not just some random jumble of living things. There's actually a hidden order to all of this.
So the big puzzle here is figuring out how we make sense of all this biodiversity. Well, life on Earth is organized into very specific levels. Think of it kind of like a set of those nesting dolls. You start with the absolute smallest, simplest pieces, and you put them together to build something bigger. Then you take those bigger things and combine them to make something even bigger. At every single step, the next level gets way more complex, and it completely includes the level right before it. So, how exactly does nature pull this off?
To really get the big picture, we first have to zoom all the way in. Section 1, the smallest building blocks.
Here we are at the very bottom, the molecular level. This is the absolute smallest level of life's organization. Even though living things can be huge, they're all made up of these tiny, invisible molecules that power life processes. We're talking about things like water, proteins, glucose for energy, and, of course, DNA. And what happens down at this tiny level? Mostly chemical reactions and getting energy. Oh, and here's a super cool fact. The DNA molecule actually stores all the genetic information for an organism. It's basically the ultimate instruction manual for life, written entirely at the molecular level.
Now, when those molecules join together, they form the next step up, the cellular level. The cell is the basic unit of a living organism. Literally, everything alive is made of cells. You've got all sorts of different types, like nerve cells, plant cells with their sturdy little walls, and even single-celled bacteria.
Some organisms, like bacteria or amoebas, are just one single cell doing everything all by itself. But whether an organism is unicellular or multicellular, every single cell has some really important jobs. A cell breathes, it gets food and nutrition, it grows, and it reproduces by dividing. It's kind of like a tiny, bustling factory inside you. And to give you a sense of just how much we rely on these cells, get this. There are about 30 trillion cells in the human body alone. 30 trillion. Imagine 30 trillion of those tiny biological factories working together non-stop just so you can walk, talk, and watch this explainer. But what happens when we zoom out? We've looked at the invisible molecules and the tiny cells. Now it's time for Section 2, Organisms and Populations. When all those billions and trillions of cells combine and start working as a team, we reach the organismal level. This is an individual living organism. It could be a towering tree, a cute cat, a mushroom growing in the dirt, a butterfly, or even a human being, like you. At this level, the whole organism takes on completely new characteristics. It grows, it develops, it reproduces, and it actively reacts to its environment.
Okay, let's zoom out again. Organisms don't usually live completely alone, right? That brings us to the population and species level. A species is simply a group of similar organisms that can reproduce with one another. But when a group of organisms of the same exact species live together in the same area, we call that a population. Think about it. A single wolf is an organism, but wolves live in packs. So a pack of wolves living in a specific forest makes up a wolf population. Same goes for plants. A group of birch trees growing together forms a birch population. At this level, scientists study things like how many organisms there are, how they spread out, and how they reproduce.
Let's see how this builds when we mix different populations together out in nature. Section 3, Communities and Ecosystems.
It's really important to draw a clear line here. A population is just one species, just the wolves or just the birch trees. But in the wild, species don't live in a bubble. When you have a group of different living organisms living together and interacting with each other, you've reached the community level, which scientists also call a biosynosis. So a community isn't just the wolves. It's the wolves, the deer they hunt, the birch trees they hide behind, the birds up in the branches, and the grass on the ground, all interacting together in a forest, meadow, swamp, or coral reef.
Now let's zoom out to the ecosystem level.
This is a massive jump in complexity. Why? Because until now, we've only been talking about living things. An ecosystem includes that living community, but it also brings in the non-living nature that surrounds them. We're talking sunlight, air, water, and soil. These living and non-living components are deeply connected by exchanging matter and energy. Think of a lake, a dense forest, a dry desert, or even just a fish tank in your classroom. The living things, like the fish and plants, completely rely on the non-living things like water, light, and oxygen just to survive.
So, we've built all the way up from invisible molecules to massive ecosystems. But what happens when we zoom out one final time? Section 4. The entire biosphere.
We finally reached the biosphere level. The biosphere is quite simply the part of Earth where life exists. It's the highest, most complex level of the whole shebang. It includes absolutely all the ecosystems and all the living organisms on our planet. It covers the entire Earth. Wherever life exists, whether it's swimming deep down in the ocean, burrowing into the soil, or flying way up high in the air, it is part of the biosphere.
Now we gotta ask the most important question here. Section 5. Why study life's levels? Why do scientists spend their whole lives looking into this?
Well, let's look at how they all connect. It's this perfect, logical chain. Molecules form cells. Cells build individual organisms. Organisms of the same kind group into populations. Different populations interact to form communities. Communities interact with non-living things to create ecosystems. And all those ecosystems together make up the biosphere. You literally cannot understand the whole planet without understanding the tiny cells. And you definitely can't understand the cells without looking at the molecules.
Breaking it down like this basically gives scientists superpowers. It allows them to understand the hidden structure of living nature and study the incredibly complicated relationships between organisms. When we understand how a tiny change at the cellular level might affect a whole ecosystem, we're way better equipped to protect nature and preserve the planet's biodiversity. And hey, it directly helps us too. Studying the molecular and cellular levels helps us treat diseases and improve human health, while studying ecosystems helps us develop new science and technology for a sustainable future. Protecting this massive system is an absolutely crucial task for every single person on Earth. All of these levels are so deeply connected. If you change something at the very bottom, it ripples all the way to the top. So, as you go out into the world today, look at the trees, look at your pets, and remember, from tiny molecules to the entire biosphere, all living things are connected in one amazing system called life on Earth. So next time you step outside, ask yourself, what role are you going to play in protecting this incredible system? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and stay curious.